So we are back now doing chapter 3 in Gulliver's Travels. I ask for freedom. When night fell, I crawled into my new home to rest. I had to sleep on the ground because there wasn't anything in the kingdom large enough for me to lie on. Later, the emperor ordered his workers to make a bed for me. They carted 600 mattresses into my little house and sewed them together, 4 deep. An army of seamstresses sewed hundreds of sheets and blankets together to make bed covers. Word of my arrival in the tiny kingdom quickly spread across the land. Every morning, an immense crowd waited outside the house to see me. It was such a curiosity that farmers abandoned their fields and women left their work to come and stare. It got so bad that the emperor ordered everybody to go back home. Nobody was permitted to return unless they bought a license. Meanwhile, the emperor and his counselors met to decide my fate. They worried that if I escaped, my huge appetite would cause a famine. At first, they thought to starve me or shoot me in the face with poisoned arrows. Then the emperor heard that I had let the 6 troublemakers go free. He and his court were so impressed that he immediately ordered that I should be properly fed and cared for. Every morning after that, 6 cattle, 40 sheep, and large quantities of bread and other food were delivered to my house. 600 servants were assigned to look after me, and 300 tailors were ordered to sew new clothes. My greatest joy was that 6 of His Majesty's greatest scholars were sent to teach me their language. In about 3 weeks, I made progress in learning their language. The emperor frequently visited and assisted in teaching me. On one occasion, I expressed my desire for freedom. "My lord," I began, "I would like these chains removed so I could be free." "I see," the emperor said, placing his hand on his chin. He thought for a while. "But how can I be sure that you will remain peaceful in our kingdom of Lilliput once the chains are gone?" he asked. I raised my right hand. "I swear to it," I said, solemnly. I was happy to know the name of this tiny place. The emperor nodded. "So be it," he said. "But first you must be searched for weapons. If you have any, their enormous size could destroy us. They will be returned to you when you leave our kingdom." He turned his horse and rode away. That afternoon, 2 officers arrived to make their search. They stood at my feet, scratching their heads. "We are here on the emperor's orders to search you," he said. "Have you any weapons on you?" the other said. "See for yourself," I said. I carefully picked them up and placed them gently into each of my pockets, a pocket at a time. They squirmed around like squirrels looking for hidden nuts. If I hadn't known they were fully grown men, I would have swatted a pocket to make them stop. After they had emerged from my pockets, they listed what they had found. I didn't show them my secret pocket because it contained items I didn't want them to find. When they finished, I sent them down. "What will you report you found?" I asked. "We don't know," the first officer said. "Read your list and I will tell you," I said. The officer, looking much relieved, unfolded his list and began to read. "A piece of cloth as large as a palace rug." "That is my handkerchief," I said. "Many sheets of thin white material covered with black figures as big as our hats," the officer said. "That is my notebook. The black marks are my writing," I said. Item by item, he read his list and I responded. "A whale-sized handle filled with long, thin rods." "My comb." "2 hollow iron tubes with wooden handles, each twice as large as a horse." "My pistols." "Some large flat metal discs and those are a few coins." "2 shiny steel plates folded into large handles as big as doors." "One is my pocket knife and the other is my razor." "A giant clanking engine with a transparent window. Inside 2 large black arrows pointing from the center at the circle of figures." "My pocket watch," I said with a laugh. "A bag bigger than a fisherman's net containing several large pieces of yellow metal." "My purse and some gold nuggets." "A leather pouch with pockets. One contains large metal balls of great weight, and the other is filled with an unknown black powder." "My ammunition belt with gunpowder and shot lead for my pistols." The emperor arrived surrounded by 3,000 of his best troops. He read the officers' list. "I would like to see these things," he said to me. "Please empty your pockets and place them on the ground." I did as I was told, but when I drew my sword from its sheath, I waved it in the air over the troops' heads. They wheeled and they fell back in a loud shout. The emperor didn't budge. Put that down too, he commanded, without a trace of fear in his voice. I put the sword next to the other things. There is one more thing I would like to show you, Your Excellency, I said. I drew my pistols and filled one with powder, but no ball. I pointed the barrel to the sky and I fired. An explosion of fire and a cloud of black smoke erupted from the barrel. 100 troops in the front rank fell to the ground as if they were struck dead. The rest ran for their lives. I glanced at the emperor. His eyes were wide open, but he bravely stood his ground. That is very impressive. Man mountain, was all that he said. I piled the rest of my belongings on the ground so the emperor could examine them. He put his hands to his ears as he walked around my watch. To him, its ticking surely sounded like musket shots. He studied each item carefully. He permitted me to keep my watch, pocket knife, razor, and other personal items. My sword, pistols, and ammunition pouch were loaded onto 6 large carriages and carted off. I didn't tell him my spectacles, a small telescope, and a few other things I thought might be useful were hidden in my secret pocket. My plan was to win my freedom as soon as possible. So I did everything I could to show that I was not a danger to the emperor or to Lilliput. I practiced their language every day. I let groups of children dance on the palm of my hand or play hide and seek in my hair whenever they wanted. Pretty soon they lost their fear and eventually became very friendly. One morning, as I was basking in the sun, a tiny horse and a rider appeared on the road leading to the city. It was a messenger sent by the emperor. "You are invited to an entertainment given in your honor by the emperor," he shouted. I was so pleased I answered in my normal voice, "I accept with delight." The poor man nearly fell off his horse. "I'm sorry," I quickly whispered. "Please tell His Majesty I am honored." The man rubbed his ears and scowled at me as he rode away. Workmen arrived that afternoon. In 2 days, they had constructed a stage the size of a small, low table in front of my house. The top was just even with my nose when I lay on my stomach the way I did when I studied anthills as a boy. The day of the entertainment had arrived. The emperor and the empress sat on the thrones at the end of the table. I lay on the ground at the other. They nodded to me, and I nodded respectfully back. "We hope you will enjoy the performance," the emperor shouted. "I'm sure I will," I replied softly. The performers had come from all over the kingdom. There were jugglers and trick riders on horses and acrobats, but the most impressive to me were the rope dancers. The rope dancers strung a slender thread a foot off the ground between 2 poles placed 2 feet apart. To them, the thread was as high and as dangerous as a tightrope. Each dancer climbed onto the suspended thread and carefully danced to the middle. Then, all alone and with nothing to hold on for balance, the dancer jumped high into the air. The dancers who jumped the highest received the most applause from the emperor, and they also received the greatest rewards. Sadly, many fell and got nothing. I picked up one who had fallen. "Blast," he said in disgust. "I have practiced all my life to win the emperor's favor, and I failed." I put him down and he walked off shaking his head. "Don't despair," I whispered to him. But I don't know if he was listening. The next act was leaping and creeping. It was not as dangerous as rope dancing. The emperor enjoyed this act very much. He held out a stick in front of him level to the ground. Each performer would then leap over the stick or creep under it. Sometimes the emperor held the stick very high. Other times he held it very low. Each successful leaper and creeper was awarded a colorful ribbon by the emperor himself. I had seen these ribbons before, and I was amused that almost everyone in the royal court had one. I applauded when the last act ended. The noise of my clapping frightened a number of the horses, and many heads turned upwards expecting to see thunderclouds. "I have an act for you, Your Majesty," I said, "but first I will need time to prepare." "We will return tomorrow," the emperor said. I gently helped the members of the royal audience to the ground, and they rode off. I immediately went to work. With the emperor's permission, I had his woodman cut 4 tall trees from the nearby forest. They were each 2 feet long. I trimmed them with my pocket knife and sharpened on one end. I stuck them into the ground in a rectangular pattern so that the tops were about 18 inches in the air. I then tied the corners of my handkerchief to the poles and pulled it drum tight. I cut some smaller trees and placed them around the edges to form a guardrail so nothing could fall off. A perfect stage, I said when I finally finished. The emperor and his court returned the next day. I will put your throne in the place of honor, I said. I lifted the emperor's gilded chair into the air with him on it and placed it at the end of my aerial stage. I put the empress's throne next to his. I lifted the members of the court to the stage, but they had to be content to stand behind the emperor. I turned my head toward the unseen side of the house. Troops, prepare to march, I commanded. A tiny voice and the sound of a bugle answered. The emperor seemed surprised. Ready, march, I ordered. With a roll of drums and a chorus of trumpets, the emperor's elite guard rode into view on 4.5-inch tall steeds. They looked like a perfect collection of toy soldiers. I placed my open hand on the ground. The first rank pranced into my palm. I lifted the horses and the riders onto the stage, and I did the same with the others until the whole troop was lined up in orderly rows on my handkerchief facing the emperor. I knelt behind the audience and issued commands to the troop. Wheel, I ordered, and they slowly turned in perfect unison. Prepare for a mock battle, I said, and they split into two sections. They battled one another with great enthusiasm, taking care that nobody got hurt. Wonderful, wonderful, the emperor shouted. Show me more. I nodded. The grand finale, I said, loud enough to be heard over the horizon. A cloud of dust arose, and in minutes a vast army of 3,000 troops marched towards me. I rose and spread my legs wide apart. The ranks of the soldiers marked through my open legs as if they were passing beneath a giant arch. The emperor crowed with delight. A magnificent sight, Man Mountain, he shouted over the din of the tiny marching feet. To me, the sound was more like the falling of a light rain. Seeing the emperor was pleased, I made my move. Your Majesty, I have a request, I said. I have pledged to do no harm if you will free me from these chains. I shook my leg for effect. The chains clinked, though to the Lilliputians the sound was loud and ominous. I ask now for my freedom. The emperor murmured to the crowd, the members of his court standing beside him, and then he turned to me. All but one of my ministers has agreed to set you free, he shouted. They will write a document stating the conditions of your freedom. I returned the emperor and his court to the ground, pleased that I would soon walk around Lilliput a free man. I knew that it was Shreshk-Blhogan who objected to my freedom. For some reason, he had chosen to be my enemy. And that is the end of chapter 3.